My father did send a missive, declaring, I cast thee off, all discourse henceforth shall be conducted through mine attorney. I did respond, comprehended the matter at hand, and then I did take my leave, withdrawing all funds from our shared enterprise, severing all monetary aid to the kin. 3 days hence, my mother didst call in great distress, exclaiming, What mischief hath thou wrought? For our kin doth unravel before mine eyes. Gratitude I extend for thy presence on this day. May thy hours be filled with joy, no matter the place thou dost find thyself. Pray, do share in the comments whence thou art observing and the hour that doth grace thy locale. Pray, let us embark upon our tale together. The atmosphere within my chamber oft bore a pristine quality, as if it were imbued with the gentle hum of industrious machines, neatly arranged along one side, working in harmonious diligence. It stood in sharp relief to the atmosphere of my homeland, laden with unvoiced anticipations. The overwhelming fragrance of my mother's lavish perfume sought to veil the more profound unease that lay beneath, and the subtle, lingering aroma of aged tobacco smoke entwined within my father's chamber of contemplation. Today, the very air within the office, once crisp and invigorating, now bore down upon my breast, a palpable burden that weighed heavily upon my spirit. Mine eyes were fixed upon my device, particularly upon a missive that had but recently graced my screen, arriving less than a mere 10 minutes past. The utterances were plain, harsh, and irrevocable. From my progenitor I cast thee aside. Let all discourse henceforth be conducted through mine attorney. I perused it once more, the radiant white script upon the shadowy display becoming somewhat indistinct as my eyes brimmed with emotion. Cast aside, as though I were a shattered device, a defective item sent back to the maker. Throughout my existence, it hath seemed as though I were ever striving to secure mine own rightful station, to demonstrate that I possess greater worth than my brother Mark, the favored one, to be regarded as more than merely the family's own source of gold. At the tender age of 22, just emerged from the halls of learning, whilst my companions grappled with the trials of rent and meager sustenance, I found myself channeling a considerable portion of my nascent earnings from the realm of technology consulting to bolster the family enterprise, a modest and antiquated manufacturing establishment bequeathed to my father, who, with unwavering resolve, spurned the call for modernization. It was not merely a matter of assistance. It transformed into an expectation, and thence into a reliance most profound. In the span of 5 years, as my own enterprises in the realm of technology ascended to heights beyond my father's ken, my contributions swelled to encompass a remarkable 70% of the family's total earnings. Loans upon 2 abodes, the primary dwelling and a retreat by the sea, payments for opulent chariots, excursions that exceed the worth of my initial year's earnings, marked ceaseless procession of ventures that vanished swifter than dew in the Californian rays, and of utmost importance, my mother's ever-mounting medical expenses for a lingering ailment, rendered the full tribute, not solely at their behest, but driven by an earnest yearning to find my place among them. I yearned for my sire's affirming gesture, my dam's sincere countenance unburdened by the weight of coin, and Mark's esteem rather than his customary dismissive gesture. In my folly, I held fast to the notion that my presence, my offerings, and my selfless acts would at long last secure for me a cherished position within the esteemed circle of kin they paraded before the eyes of the world, a flawless and thriving assembly. Instead, it did but summon forth an abundance of entreaties, an ever-growing tide of demands, and the hushed, unyielding sensation that I was naught but a mere resource to be governed, rather than a soul to be treasured. The shared enterprise ledger was included therein. In days of yore, when I pondered the notion of entering the familial enterprise, albeit fleetingly, I soon discerned it to be a vessel adrift, helmed by hubris, which we had once launched. I didst invest my first earnings from the realm of technology into it, believing it could serve as a passageway. That bridge was never constructed, yet the tale endured. As my enterprise flourished, it transformed into the favored conduit. From the coffers of my enterprise, I would transfer funds into our shared treasury, whence my progenitors would manage the expenses, the stipends, and the familial ventures, dear Reed. Forsaking the venture, Mark, I placed my faith in their hands. Perchance I yearned to place my faith in them so fervently that it did cloud my judgment. It was my greatest folly, born of a lifetime spent in the pursuit of filial devotion. Of late, the weight of expectation hath grown most intolerable. Mark's most recent endeavor, a grand vision of an application, met with a most unfortunate demise, plunging him into a chasm of debt, whilst irate investors loomed with threats of legal recourse. My sire, loath to draw upon his own fortunes or confront the truth of his favored progeny's shortcomings, beheld my flourishing enterprise, Nexus Solutions, as the remedy to his plight. Not solely my own coffers, but the very essence of the enterprise itself. He did beseech me to part with my dominion, the very dominion I had forged through tireless toil and unwavering resolve, to conjure a grand influx of coin that might banish Mark's tribulations into the ether. The discourse had taken a most unseemly turn. It transpired but a week past, amidst a tense repast on the Lord's Day at the principal abode. The atmosphere was thick with the acrid scent of charred swine and a subtle tension that lingered like an unspoken feud. "Now is the hour to rise, Michael," my father did proclaim, reclining in his chair, a posture of feigned dominion. His voice fell upon the air, lacking the luster of warmth. My mother sat beside him, her visage marked by feigned concern, at times dabbing at her eyes with a delicate napkin. Mark did but smirk, his fingers dancing upon his repast, whilst his mind already squandered the coin in fanciful reverie. I endeavoured to elucidate. "Verily, father, the Nexus doth not belong solely to mine own purse. It is a collective of souls, bound by purpose, with patrons who hold steadfast faith in its destiny, transferring a commanding share for monetary gain. Such is not the manner in which it doth operate. And rescuing Mark's endeavour, lo, a void of darkness doth appear. It shall not mend aught." Mine own sire did strike his palm upon the table, causing the silver to leap in startled disarray. "Speak not ill of thy brother, for such words bear a heavy weight. Fortune did but frown upon him, casting shadows upon his path. This is kin, Michael. Kin doth aid kin." This was among his preferred rationales, a barrier he brandished whenever he sought something from me that transcended the true essence of kinship. "Forsooth, dear father, I have lent mine aid for many a year, a full 70%, dost thou not recall? What dost thou inquire regarding the remedies for mother? Mark's recent trifles of misfortune?" My voice did quaver, not from dread, but from the burdensome, wearisome weight of it all. Yet to part with my enterprise is to relinquish my destiny. All that I have wrought. Alas, I find myself unable to fulfill that request. It is now the hour of my mother. I found myself in a most distressing predicament, unable to swallow it whole. What of me? Self-serving, perchance? After investing my vigor, my resources, my very essence into sustaining their existence, into financing the way of life they deemed their due. Mark at last raised his gaze, his eyes slitted with scrutiny. "Indeed, good Sir Mike, do not be unkind. It is but a mere coin, a fleeting trifle of earthly value. One may ever summon forth additional abundance," uttered as though by one who hath never garnered a coin that he could not swiftly part with. Lo, that was the hour of fate. The true nadir was not found within the lines, but rather in that repast of the morn. Seated in that moment, the acrid scent of charred bacon wafting through the air, I beheld the frigid anticipation reflected in their gaze, whilst the well-worn charges of egotism echoed in my ears for the audacity to utter a refusal. Upon gazing at the portrait that adorns the mantelpiece, I beheld our visages, all aglow with smiles, a flawless deception ensnared within the confines of a frame. In that fleeting instant, I discerned the truth of my estrangement, a reality that had taken root long ere the written word was laid bare. I was a wellspring that would not yield to further exploitation. Upon my departure, I found the atmosphere beyond the threshold to be unexpectedly pure, in stark contrast to the city's pervasive haze. With a heavy heart, I returned to my humble abode, the term self-serving resounding in my mind like a haunting refrain. A deep sorrow enveloped my heart, not for the kin I possessed, but for the cherished clan I had longed to embrace. And then the prose unfolds. The solemn proclamation of conflict from the very one who was meant to shield me from harm. Mine own progenitor. I cast thee aside. Let all discourse be conducted through mine attorney. The anguish struck with the force of a cruel dagger, yet it was swiftly succeeded by a different sensation. A chill, unyielding determination. If they sought counsel, so be it. If they desired communication of a more formal nature, it is duly noted. They had established the decrees. Now I would engage with their craft, and I would wield the tenets they established to my own benefit. I took hold of my device once more, my fingers, which had quivered in uncertainty, now found their steadiness. I inscribed 3 words, comprehended. I did strike the button to dispatch my missive. The hush that ensued after that solitary utterance bore weight, akin to a portal closing with finality, a tale reaching its conclusion. My breast still bore a weight, yet it was no longer ensnared by cruel thorns. It did seem akin to a tightly wound spring, poised and ready to unleash its latent energy. The pang of treachery lingered still, nestled deep within my core, yet it was shrouded by an intensifying, resolute fervor. They had marked a boundary. Lo, I was on the brink of revealing the consequences that befall one who doth provoke another, who hath ever bestowed their all, to the very edge. My subsequent entreaty was not to beseech or elucidate. It was to Sarah Jenkins, a keen and pragmatic legal mind of esteemed reputation, suggested by one of my investors. Her voice upon the line was serene, most dignified. A most welcome reprieve from the tempest of emotions I have just endured. With brevity, I laid bare the circumstances, the insistence upon relinquishing my share in the enterprise, my steadfast refusal, the missive of disownment, the shared account of commerce, and the many years of fiscal backing. "Good sir," she did declare, her tone unwavering, "this deed doth bear the weight of enmity, both in the eyes of the law and the heart's own turmoil. In light of the clear directive that all discourse shall be channeled through legal representatives, we shall adhere to this mandate. Your foremost concern must be the safeguarding of thy possessions, particularly that shared account of commerce. Whence cometh the privilege of access? What be the conditions?" I did expound upon the arrangement. "My sire and I share the stewardship of our enterprise. Either party may commence the transfer of assets. What of the treasures contained therein? From the fruits of my labor, I did transfer funds, whether from my enterprise or my own hoard, to meet the needs of my kin or to set aside for what I deemed their protection. It did swell to a considerable size. Hath thy father or mother been extracting from it to sustain the household's needs? Indeed, the burdens of loans, the weight of expenses, the demands of Mark's enterprise, and the care required for my mother's health." Verily, Sarah did proclaim. In light of the disownment missive and the directive to converse solely through legal representation, their deeds manifest a distinct rupture of the bond, encompassing the monetary matters entwined with that connection. Pray, let thy first course of action, henceforth, be to safeguard the treasures within that shared coffer. Bestow upon thyself the remainder of the funds, after duly accounting for any rightful and verifiable shared commitments that may demand attention, into a treasury that bears solely thy name. We shall then duly inform them, through my office, that this course of action has been undertaken in accordance with their expressed wish to dissolve all connections and address affairs through legal means. Felt frigid, piercing, yet rational. They sought the law's decree. This was within the bounds of the law. This was the safeguarding of that which belonged to me, from those who had demonstrated their willingness to seize all should I grant them the opportunity. I summoned forth the banking application upon mine computer screen. The equilibrium did cause me to hesitate. Countless seasons of my existence, my toil, my offerings, now resting in the coffers governed by the very soul who hath cast me aside. Mine fingers did linger o'er the button of transfer. This was not merely the transfer of coinage. It was marking the boundary with a mighty machine, as if to declare a solemn decree. Seemed imperative, harsh, and far past the appointed hour. I did commence the transfer, leaving but a trifling, emblematic sum in its wake. Next, I didst peruse mine automatic payments. The ceaseless tributes to the lender for their primary abode. The fees of the condominium association. The payments due for the chariot of modern design. The swift transfers into my mother's account for her medical co-pays and treatments. One by one, I did cast them aside. Each click of the mouse did echo like the snip of a delicate thread, cleaving asunder a bond once held dear. It did wound the heart. A profound sorrow doth weigh upon my breast, particularly in the matter of foregoing the payments for healing. Indeed, my mother did suffer from an ailment, verily. Yet, her malady hath been wielded as a tool of manipulation against me for many a year. A weighty shroud of remorse enveloped my very being. And thus, the burden of her medical care now fell upon them, for they had cast aside the individual who once bore the cost. This was the outcome of their deed. This was comprehended. The 7 hours that ensued were the most protracted of my existence. The hush was overwhelming in the beginning. No wrathful missives, no beseeching summons, no appearances. Seemed most wondrously unreal. With toil I labored, to the gym I ventured forth, and there did I converse with my companion David, who lent an ear with gentle understanding, affirming my sentiments without reproach. David was a companion of such noble spirit, one who, by the bonds of affection, transformed into kin. His honesty shone bright, his reliability steadfast, and his kindness a gentle balm to the weary heart. He had oft beheld fleeting visions of my kin's intricate tapestry through the years, and with a tender spirit, he did ever urge me to establish the lines that ought not be crossed. "Thou hast acted rightly, Mike," he did proclaim upon my recounting of the missive and mine own reply. "It is indeed harsh, yet they have compelled thy action. Thou canst not continue to ignite thine own spirit to warm the hearts of others, particularly when they bemoan the haze that ensues." His utterances were akin to a thunderous explosion. The stillness resembled the calm that precedes the tempest's wrath. Alas, I foresaw its fleeting nature. A tremor of unease stirred within me, as I awaited their response upon the revelation of the fiscal obscurity. Mine eyes did wander to the device, against my better judgment, the glassy surface a dark visage mirroring my own anxious countenance. Each unfamiliar digit did startle me greatly. I endeavored to fortify my mind against their impending assault, the charges laid bare, the cunning deceit, the probable campaign of defamation. Lo, on the third day, at the stroke of 7 hours past my response, the device of communication did ring forth. It was my dear mother. Her name, a beacon upon the screen, did strike a spark of fervor within my very soul. I inhaled deeply, steeling my resolve. I did respond. Her voice lacked the customary gentle, imploring cadence. It was a sound most shrill, a tempest of urgency, woven with threads of utter dismay. "Michael, what mischief hast thou wrought? The coffers are bare. The payment for the mortgage hath failed to find its mark. Your sire doth seethe with fury. Mark finds himself in a plight, unable to procure the funds necessary for his dwelling. What dost thou perceive unfolding?" Her swift inquiries assailed me as if they were a flurry of piercing pebbles. I didst shut mine eyes for but a fleeting moment, directing mine thoughts upon the lawyer's serene counsel. Preserve the demarcation. Adhere steadfastly to the newly wrought decrees they have established. Mother. Mine utterance was firm, perchance a shade too tranquil, even to mine own hearing. As my father did entreat through the medium of a missive 3 days past, henceforth all discourse concerning familial affairs shall be conducted through mine attorney, Sarah Jenkins. Her means of communication were inscribed within the formal missive she dispatched on the morrow, affirming the alteration in fiscal arrangements. A moment of astonished quietude lingered on the opposite side. Then her voice ascended, a tempest of unblemished wrath supplanting the earlier dread. "Your counsel. Esteemed correspondence. What dost thou speak of? We are thine kin, Michael. Thou canst not simply sever our ties. Your sire doth cast a shadow of menace." Her voice transformed into a tempest of nearly unintelligible reproaches and weeping. A tempest of manipulative affections. "What manner of deed is this thou hast wrought? To thine mother. Mine remedies. Desirest thou mine end? That verse. Desirest thou my demise? The most profound burden of remorse. It once did lay me low. This occasion, it seemed but an empty spectacle, lacking in genuine substance. Mother, I reiterated, piercing through her theatrical lamentations. Mine utterance resolute. My father hath chosen to cast me aside and summon the council of legal men. I do acquiesce. Pray, direct all inquiries and matters of concern unto Sarah. She shall elucidate the matter, which is a direct result of father's decree. I must take my leave now. Michael, thou art unable to do so. Thy brother. Mark doth proclaim that thou hast purloined the coin. Text. Thy sire doth proclaim his intent to bring forth a suit against thee. Michael, I beseech thee. The entire kin doth unravel before mine eyes. What deeds hast thou wrought? Her last utterance was a lament steeped in true despair. The meticulously crafted veneer of their idyllic existence shattering beneath the burden of fiscal truth. Comprehended, I uttered softly, the term bearing a new-found significance henceforth. A weighty, mournful conclusion. Then I did take my leave from the discourse. Mine hand did tremble once more. Yet this occasion is not born of anguish, but rather from the grand and formidable toil required to maintain that threshold. I reclined in my seat, pondering the weight of existence. The crisp atmosphere of the office doth turn suddenly chill. They were unraveling at the seams. Not for the sake of my own desires, but for the reason that their very base was constructed upon shifting sands, sustained by my reluctant offering. And when I didst remove the sand, the structure didst collapse. This was not of my doing. Thus did their fate unfold. The incessant ringing of the device did not cease thereafter. Yet I did not respond to their inquiries. They were met with the silence of the answering machine. Each missive a fresh tempest, fraught with ire, menaces, and foreboding. Strange machinations of deceit and manipulation. We have never cast you aside. That missive was a misapprehension. Fair Sarah did manage all affairs, dispatching formal missives and thwarting their endeavors to circumvent her authority. Then the anticipated event did unfold. A missive hath arrived from an attorney, representing my progenitor and the family enterprise. A solemn entreaty for the restitution of the moneys from the shared coffer, asserting that I had wrongfully seized them, for they were justly a portion of the familial enterprise's treasures. They sought to wield the very legal apparatus they championed as a means to coerce me into submission, or at the very least, to reclaim their lost coin. Mark found himself named among the participants in certain correspondences. His name dost appear upon ominous missives and scrolls dispatched straightway to Sarah's chamber, brimming with fervent allegations. He was no longer merely the cause. He did engage with fervor in the onslaught, driven by a sense of privilege and a tempest of fear. Lo, this was the moment. The mounting of tensions. They did pursue me through the courts. A tension coiled within my belly, yet it was not dread that stirred therein. It was the serpent's coil, drawing ever closer, tightening its embrace. Upon my encounter with Sarah, we didst examine the annals of the joint account, following the lineage of each significant deposit back to mine own personal or company coffers. We have gathered chronicles of their extravagant expenditures and Mark's ill-fated enterprises, revealing the paths taken by their coin. We possessed a veritable mountain of evidence, illuminating my years of unwavering support, their reliance upon it, and at last, the very text of disownment, serving as proof that they had taken the initiative to sever the bond upon which our financial arrangement was founded. Text, their assertion bears no weight, Sarah declared with poise, perusing the pile of papers before her. The coffers were chiefly filled by thine own earnings and the rightful gains of thy enterprise, rather than the bounty of the familial trade. Thou wert a co-proprietor with rights of withdrawal. Their words render matters less complex, in legal parlance, marking a distinct separation. Their endeavor to seize the funds now appears as a forlorn gambit, following the demise of their monetary support. Yet, we sought more than mere protection. We sought to unveil their genuine intentions and fiscal misdeeds. Herein lies the moment when the inquiry took a turn, unveiling the initial twist of fate. Lo, Sarah's band, delving deep into the coffers of the family enterprise as they sought to grasp the essence of the shared account, did uncover discrepancies most troubling. It was not merely a matter of poor governance. They uncovered proof that my father had been gradually diverting resources from the faltering enterprise, not for rightful expenditures, but for his own gain and to clandestinely settle Mark's mounting obligations from past unsuccessful endeavors, debts that Mark had perpetually minimized or deceived others about. The shared treasury, sustained by my coin, did not merely fund their way of living. It served, in a manner most subtle, to mend the breaches wrought by my sire's misdeeds and the shortcomings of Mark. Behold the instant when fair Sarah unveiled the pivotal manuscript, a meticulous account of forensic inquiry, illuminating dubious transfers, cryptic expenditures, and notable inconsistencies. The document bore a weighty presence in my grasp. Perusing the frigid monetary discourse that laid bare their treachery struck me as a blow to the very core. Verily, the magnitude of their treachery didst extend far beyond mere claims of entitlement. It was a scheme of cunning manipulation. They did regard thy coin as an endless reservoir of aid, Sarah did convey, her tone somber, concealing the full measure of the ruin wrought by their own deeds and Mark's shortcomings. This proof hath fortified my stance, demonstrating that their assertions regarding finances were not merely unfounded, but rather efforts to mask their own misdeeds. Yet the kin, shrouded in tempestuous fear and ire, didst persist in their advance. The campaign of calumny grew ever more fervent. Mark didst cast forth subtle insinuations upon the realm of social media, lamenting the presence of familial parasites and treachery most foul, which were swiftly magnified by certain supporters of the family in the realm of the Internet. It pained my heart to behold those I had cherished through the years, casting their judgments and aligning themselves with falsehoods. Yet, David and mine own companions were swift to retort, upholding the virtue of my character. Then did the second turn of fate arrive. We sought a means to substantiate the familial interplay, the cunning machinations, and the overwhelming sense of privilege that transcended mere monetary accounts. Sarah did propose that we reach out to our trusted family accountant, a gentleman by the name of Mr. Henderson, who hath managed both the affairs of our family business and the personal finances of my progenitors for many a year. We were uncertain if he would speak, apprehensive of the consequences to his vocation or his allegiance to my father. To our astonishment, Mr. Henderson did consent to a meeting. He appeared as a subdued figure, bearing the weight of years upon his brow, a man of quiet demeanor in the twilight of his 60s. We chanced upon one another at a place of tranquility, a serene café. The atmosphere was imbued with the rich aroma of brewed coffee and the musty scent of aged parchment. He did utter his words with great deliberation, each syllable weighed with care. He had beheld the family's fortunes wane, noted my ever-growing offerings, and discerned the manner in which my father and mother regarded me in contrast to Mark. With a heavy heart, he acknowledged the folly of their fiscal dealings and the profound dependence of his kin upon my purse. Of greater significance, he possessed records of ancient missives wherein my father distinctly articulated the intention to utilize resources from the shared account, mentioned by name, to settle obligations arising from Mark's enterprises and personal expenditures, unambiguously recognizing that the origin was my earnings. He possessed chronicles of moments when he had counseled my father to shun such deeds, counsel that fell upon deaf ears. Present Mr. Henderson, as he doth slide a tattered folder across the table with a certain gravitas. The contents within were not adorned with grandeur, merely humble emails and spreadsheets, yet they bore the weight of explosive potential. His humble counsel was thus: I urged prudence, yet they heeded not my words. What they were engaged in was most unjust, bearing a heavy burden upon the soul. He sought not the crown of fame. He was merely unburdening his soul. He did consent to furnish a solemn declaration should it be required, a dispassionate and trustworthy observer to the prolonged deceit of fiscal affairs. Equipped with a forensic account elucidating their transgressions, the incriminating missives and documents for Mr. Henderson, alongside the initial disavowal, we stood prepared. The contest of law hath reached a point of formal parley, a final opportunity to resolve matters ere the grand trial doth commence. This was the zenith, the pivotal moment of revelation. The chamber of mediation lay devoid of embellishment, a canvas of neutrality. A lengthy table, with a mediator positioned at the helm. On one side, I and fair Sarah stand. On the contrary, my progenitor, my matron, and Mark accompanied by their legal counsel. The atmosphere hung heavy with unease. The sole sounds that grace the air are the gentle hum of the HVAC and the anxious rustling of parchment. Mine progenitors averted their gaze from mine. Mark gazed forth with a countenance devoid of expression. Their counsel didst present their argument first, recounting the tale of the loyal kin and the ungrateful wretch who did pilfer from them and forsook his ailing mother. It was a spectacle, woven with artfully selected phrases designed to stir compassion and cast me in the role of the antagonist. Mine mother didst dab her eyes at most poignant moments. Mine father sat with arms crossed, a visage of contemplation upon his brow. The visage of slighted power, at times whispering his renowned phrase, a dismissive utterance meant solely for mine ears. Then came the hour of our reckoning. Sarah was composed, matter-of-fact. She did not partake in their tale of sentiment. She did but lay forth the proof. She commenced with a recounting of my deeds, laying bare the considerable sum I had bestowed through the years, far surpassing all else within our shared coffer. She then didst present the missive of disownment. This, she proclaimed, raising a printed page aloft, is the document wherein Mr. Holden's progenitor did formally dissolve the bond and commanded that all discourse henceforth be conducted through legal representation. Mr. Holden did acquiesce, as is his rightful privilege under the law. Then did the essence of proof arrive. Sarah did present the forensic report, illuminating the dubious transfers and concealed debts entwined within the family enterprise and Mark's pursuits. She did expound upon how the monies from the shared coffer, distinctly linked to Michael's earnings, were employed to rectify these inconsistencies. She did then present the affidavit of Mr. Henderson, along with the emails most damning, which did reveal the father's knowledge and intent, as well as the warnings from Mr. Henderson that were cast aside. Reveal the kin's response as the truth was unveiled before their eyes. The visage of the father transformed from a bold defiance to a hue of mottled crimson, then to a pallid shade of white. He stammered, seeking to interject, striving to reclaim his authoritative voice, yet his utterances fell silent as Sarah, with serene composure, unfurled a cascade of truths. The matron ceased her gentle weeping, her countenance frozen in disbelief, casting frantic looks towards my sire. Mark stood in a state of utter confusion, his customary grin vanishing, replaced by an expression of growing dread as he comprehended the full measure of the revelations and his own entanglement therein. The mediator, a wise and experienced soul, didst pause Sarah at a moment most critical, casting a gaze directly upon my father. Good sir, the evidence laid before us doth strongly indicate a grave financial impropriety, revealing the calculated use of this shared account, nourished by thy progeny's funds, to mask troubles within thy enterprise and to settle the debts of Master Mark Holden. Hast thou any records that contest these particular transfers and their employments? My sire, divested of his grandiloquence, could but falter in his speech. It is the wealth of kin. He is beholden to us. Verily, it is not so straightforward. Their counsel appeared most uneasy, a countenance marred by disquietude. The atmosphere within the chamber shimmered with the inescapable gravity of verity. The hour of reckoning was not marked by a grand spectacle within the hallowed halls of justice, but rather by this subdued and heart-wrenching revelation in a stark chamber. Their artfully crafted guise of a noble household enterprise and ill-fated misfortune crumbled beneath the burden of stark, unyielding figures and impartial accounts. They were not merely privileged, but rather cunning in their duplicity. The parley drew to a close in but a brief span thereafter. The resolution was evident. Their suit lay lifeless, bereft of hope. They possessed no rightful claim to the funds that Michael did withdraw, and to pursue the matter further would surely invite a more profound scrutiny into their own fiscal improprieties, which could yield dire legal repercussions for both my father and Mark. The arbiter did earnestly counsel them to relinquish all assertions and refrain from further discourse, lest they encounter dire repercussions. The aftermath did not unfold as a swift eruption of delight. It was a still and weighty weariness, intertwined with a feeling of release. The menacing shadows of legal threats have ceased to loom. The desperate cries did gradually wane, yielding to a profound stillness. Whispers upon the wind did reach mine ears, and fleeting visions did grace mine eyes, revealing the disintegration of their realm. The household enterprise, already teetering on the brink, could not endure the revelation and the absence of Michael's financial support. Properties were divested, among them the holiday abode by the sea. Their opulent existence faded into the annals of time. Behold, his name besmirched by whispers of deceit, he found himself in a dire quest for gainful employment. The mother's medical treatments turned into a true trial for them to bear, a bitter and inescapable result of the tumultuous financial tempest they had wrought. In their demise, I found not the sweet taste of victory, but rather a profound sorrow for the shattered state of affairs, accompanied by a gentle solace in my liberation from their beleaguered vessel. Mine restoration was not swift. The anguish of treachery, the relentless torment of deception, the profound hurt of being cast aside by my own progenitor, it hath left indelible marks upon my soul. I persevered in my endeavors alongside Sarah, striving to leave no legal matters unresolved. In my journey, I have sought the counsel of a wise guide, delving into the intricate tapestry of my emotions, striving to embrace the wisdom of my own discernment after enduring the weight of being deemed selfish or misguided for possessing desires and limits. Establishing limits hath transformed into mine own formidable strength. There exists no correspondence with my progenitors or Mark. Shunning their digits, severing electronic correspondence, and forsaking the company of those who openly align with their cause. At the outset, it bore the weight of cruelty, akin to the rending of flesh, yet the ensuing liberation was profound and boundless. The unyielding dread, the anticipation of the next summons or turmoil, vanished into the ether. The very breath I drew at last seemed pure and untainted. I have come to understand that kinship transcends mere lineage. It doth revolve around reverence, affection, truthfulness, and mutual aid, a thoroughfare shared by both parties. Mine own chosen kin, David and Sarah, who hath become a steadfast confidant and companion, along with a select band of esteemed colleagues, did fill the chasm left by mine own blood relations. They beheld me, esteemed me, not the riches I possess. With them, I could lay bare my soul, untroubled by the spectre of betrayal. In the revelry of my triumphs, I yearn for the absence of those who would inquire, "What gain dost thou seek?" As I reflect upon the past, seated in this tranquil and meticulously arranged chamber, with the cherished family portrait now absent from its rightful place upon the mantel, the path I have traversed unfolds before me with clarity. From the innocent offspring yearning for validation, the unsuspecting nurturer fostering chaos, to the scarred individual compelled to set boundaries, and ultimately, the soul who reconstructed his existence upon the bedrock of dignity and wholesome connections. The anguish was profound. The struggle was most wearisome. Yet the liberty I acquired was beyond measure. I did not merely endure. I flourished. I safeguarded that which I have wrought, not from a place of greed, but from a deep-seated claim to the fruits of my own existence and toil. Oftentimes, the most arduous lines to draw are with those whom thy heart doth cherish above all. Yet perchance, they are indeed the most essential for thine own survival. Hast thou ever found thyself compelled to mark a boundary amidst kin? What price didst thou pay? What dost thou reap from this endeavor?